COVID-19 cases are high and it's overwhelming our healthcare system. The caregivers at San Juan Regional Medical Center need your help.
Our resources are exhausted. We're very limited on what we have the capacity to do because we're being overwhelmed with the number of individuals that are requiring ICU care at this point.
So what can you do to help? Most importantly, ignore the rhetoric and get vaccinated.
Continue hand washing, continue to wear your mask and social distance.
Help us so we can help you.
Twelve minutes past 8 o'clock. It is Monday morning, the 14th day of February 2022. Good morning, everyone. I'm Scott Michlin. Thank you for tuning in to KSJE 90.9 FM, of course, over the air here in San Juan County, New Mexico. Streaming everywhere else on planet Earth from our website, KSJE.com. And we also welcome our viewers who are watching this visual radio program. The video is streaming live this morning to the KSJE Facebook page, our YouTube channel, and our Twitter account. So we're glad that you are with us this morning, everybody, because coming up in the next few moments, I'm going to be talking with Thomas Heuser from the San Juan Symphony. He is the music director, of course, with the San Juan Symphony. It's a big concert weekend. Concerts happening in both Durango and Farmington, so we'll get a preview of what to expect this weekend at the concert hall. So we hope you'll stay tuned for that and join us right here on KSJE. Then later on this hour, we'll be checking in with Lewis Campbell from Synergy Computer Systems in Farmington. Lewis will be here for our Monday Reboot segment when I get to talk technology, so we hope you'll stick around for that. And then next hour, it's Roving with the Arts, our long-running classical music program with Mick Hess. And Mick this morning is featuring music from trombonist Joseph Alessi coming up on the program today. So you'll hear that this morning as well. Let's talk about our weather forecast, shall we? We're expecting a mostly sunny and mild day today here in the Farmington area. Temperatures reaching nearly 60 degrees today. Clearing overnight, of course, with a low about 22. And then tomorrow, maybe a cloudy day, maybe some clouds and sun, but windy on Tuesday and a bit warmer in Farmington with a high of about 62 degrees. Well, let me introduce my guest who is joining us this morning. As he does, he's so gracious with his time. Every time there's a concert, we always ask Thomas Heuser to come on the program to talk about what to expect this weekend, and so today is no different. Thomas Heuser, the music director from the San Juan Symphony, is joining me this morning. Thomas, good morning.
Good morning, Scott. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone.
Yes, exactly. I was going to say, we both can declare our love for the San Juan Symphony today.
Perfect. I would love to.
Yes.
I'm so excited for concert weekend. As you mentioned, it's exciting.
Very much so. Very exciting. And so talk to us a little bit about this week's concert. It's continuing the theme of resilience, right, that you have chosen for this season for the San Juan Symphony. So tell us a bit more about the selections for this weekend.
That's right. Yes, this season is called The Sound of Resilience. We are, of course, coming back from a completely virtual year during the pandemic. And even though the pandemic is not at all done, apparently we are, again, excited by the return of live music and live audiences in particular at the San Juan Symphony. And so this is our third subscription program of the season. It's called Perpetual Motion. And it will be coming up this weekend, Saturday in Farmington, Saturday evening, and Sunday afternoon in Durango. It's a wonderful program. Can't wait to talk to you a little bit about it and hope to get audiences excited for the San Juan Symphony.
Very, very good. And so let's do that because, again, this is the third subscription concert of the season. Of course, there'll be another coming up in April, and then some other things you have up your sleeve that we'll talk about too as we kind of wrap up the season of the San Juan Symphony. And of course, I always like to give full disclosure that for some reason they keep me on the board of the San Juan Symphony, of which I'm proud to serve. But there is that personal connection of mine to the symphony, so I always like to make sure the listeners are aware of that connection. But the music on this weekend's concert, Thomas Heuser, maybe selections that we haven't heard before, right? You're really trying to test our knowledge of some of this music, aren't you?
Well, there's no test. Don't worry.
Okay, no test.
Come on, there'll be no quiz afterwards. But you're right. This is a relatively unusual program, this Perpetual Motion program. And just because of your disclaimer, Scott, I will say we keep you on the board for a very good reason. We're so grateful for you and the partnership with KSJE. So thank you again for having me. So this program is centered around the music of the 20th century. We have three 20th century composers, or at least composers who wrote in the 20th century, flourished then. And we're focused mainly around the Violin Concerto, or I should say the Concerto for Violin and Orchestra of Samuel Barber, the American composer. Barber's Violin Concerto is a work that I believe probably has been performed by the San Juan Symphony, but not for some time. It is a glorious work, relatively short, only about 25 or 30 minutes. But the music of Samuel Barber is important because he was essentially one of the most highly regarded American composers of the 20th century, and yet we don't find many opportunities to play his music, with a few exceptions. Samuel Barber is most well known for his Adagio for strings. This is a work that came from his second string quartet and is later adapted for chorus as an Agnus Dei. But the Adagio for strings is definitely the most often performed work of Samuel Barber's, and everyone would probably recognize this tune if it was something you heard on the radio or played by an instrumental ensemble. It's wonderfully romantic and incredibly heartfelt music, and that really is the trademark of Samuel Barber, is that romanticism and lyricism. With the Concerto for Violin and Orchestra, one of the unique things is the tuneful, songful, heartfelt, romantic nature of this music. A composer writing in the 20th century, flourishing as Samuel Barber did in the 1930s and 40s, had a lot of competing influences from musical modernism, jazz, a number of other, new styles of music, but Barber was essentially rooted in the romanticism of the 19th century, and unabashedly so. The Violin Concerto is extremely passionate and romantic, but it's also not dissonant or chromatic. It's rooted in the tonalities and the sort of stability of 19th century romanticism in the best sense, which is that it's so tuneful, so easy on the ear, and wonderful to listen to. So again, many unique features with this Violin Concerto. It does have three movements. The first two movements are both essentially lyrical and relatively slow, or at least moderately paced, which is unusual for the Violin Concerto repertoire. The violin has the opening statement. It begins right away at the very beginning of the concerto, which is unusual. There's no orchestral introduction. It just takes over right away, playing these plaintive themes. And in those first two movements, I think it's unique also that it is called the Concerto for Violin and Orchestra, because there is a great interplay between the solo violin and the musicians of the orchestra in developing the lyrical themes that Samuel Barber presents. Samuel Barber, again, studied at the Curtis Institute of Music in the 1920s, born 1910 in Philadelphia. He studied internationally and also came back to teach at Curtis before really launching into one of the most successful composing careers that we have an example of in American history in the 19th century. Pulitzer Prize winner on 2 occasions. A number of his works are for the voice. He was himself a singer, but these vocal works are incredibly important, and that influences the lyricism too of his instrumental music. He's just a wonderful lyricist with or without words. So we have this first and second movement of the Violin Concerto, this wonderful lyricism and passion, and then comes the third movement of the Violin Concerto, which is called Presto in Moto Perpetuo, which translates to fast with perpetual motion, or in perpetual motion. And that's what gave me the idea for this concert title, Perpetual Motion. It sort of stands apart from the other two movements of the concerto as being this fast and furious movement that, it's not furious, I wouldn't say, but fast and furious in the sense that there's a rhythmic drive from beginning to end that is unbelievable. A triplet figure, that just runs from beginning to end, getting even faster in the coda right at the end. It's truly virtuosic and brilliant for the soloist, but quite different from the other two. And this was an interesting phenomenon of the work's premiere. It was written in 1939. and premiered in 1940. And of course, that was a complicated time with the beginning of American involvement in the Second World War. And Samuel Barber was forced to write this concerto in a condensed time frame and under those pressures. But the violinist for whom he wrote the work was not pleased with the fact that the first two movements didn't showcase the brilliance of the solo violin because of that sort of more romantic and song-like nature. He was hoping for something that would showcase the flashy abilities of the violinist. And so the third movement, with that perpetual motion and with that virtuosity, Barber was attempting to sort of go that direction and appease the player, but it turns out it was also considered not enough. Yes, while it is fast and flashy, they considered it to be not deep enough. It didn't have enough development or, thematic variation and that kind of thing. So a sort of mixed reception from the violinist that originally, for whom it was originally written, and nevertheless now it has been recorded time and time again. Incredible recording with Isaac Stern and Leonard Bernstein. That is just, I think the nature of this piece truly speaks to Barber's aesthetic, his personal musical tastes and personality coming right to the fore. And of course, it showcases our guest artist this week at the San Juan Symphony, who's Karen Kim. Karen is coming to us from New York City, and she is was a student at the New England Conservatory. Karen is a wonderful player, Grammy Award-winning violinist for her work with the Jasper String Quartet, the works of György Ligeti. She has really championed modern music, modern American music and contemporary music in particular, and brings to the Barber Violin Concerto an incredible nuance on the violin and, again, the technical virtuosity across all ranges. So we will be welcoming Karen to the Four Corners this week, and this is Karen's debut with the San Juan Symphony with the Samuel Barber Concerto for Violin and Orchestra. So that's really the backbone, Scott, of what we have on offer this week.
Right. What a treat to hear her play here in the Four Corners, as you mentioned, Thomas Heuser, and the fact that there's a soloist on this concert leads me to my next question before we talk about the other pieces in this weekend's concert. But this is something that you haven't been able to do for the past few concerts, of having a soloist on stage, and so this is kind of exciting. And I think the orchestra's maybe a bit larger for this concert than it has been recently as well. Am I correct?
That's right. So because of the pandemic, we haven't been able to have many soloists travel in for the San Juan Symphony, and that's been, a real loss. We love having guest artists. We love that feature and having the different perspectives of traveling guests. So it's wonderful to have Karen back. And in fact, we were scheduled to play the Barber Violin Concerto with Karen Kim in the spring of 2020, and that concert was canceled at the start of the pandemic. So
we all know what happened then.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. So we're excited to welcome Karen back and really fulfill this engagement that we had to so unceremoniously break off. As to the size of the orchestra, I was apparently relatively prescient with my planning with this year, because this orchestra actually remains on the smaller side. We had hoped to expand the size of the orchestra by this time of year, but the recent Omicron wave and the stress on our healthcare systems, I'm actually kind of glad that we kept it small for this one. We are looking forward to expanding the size of the group in April. That's our newest update and plan, is to have that expansion happen a little bit later than was originally conceived. But again, with these smaller forces, I think the San Juan Symphony all season long has really represented itself beautifully, and we are live. We are with audiences and back in person on stage in Farmington and Durango, which is the big deal.
Very true. Well, but I've seen some posts from some very excited percussionists who are going to be rejoining the symphony after 2 years. So they're very excited about being included in this weekend's concert.
It's true. There are these sections that keep sort of finally having their return. We had the trombones in November. We have the percussion with this concert. And it is very exciting for these musicians that have been on the sidelines for so long. So very excited. even with the complement, it's still 50 plus players. We're just looking forward to getting back to 70 and 80, I guess, one of these days.
Right, right. And I do want to remind everyone, too, that even though you're going to be live and in person in Farmington on Saturday and in Durango on Sunday, there is still that online option, correct, for folks who want to enjoy the symphony but maybe don't still feel comfortable coming to the concert hall?
That's exactly right. Yeah, so the Sunday afternoon concert in Durango will be live broadcast and then available for on-demand viewing after the fact. And this is really the beautiful thing that came out of the pandemic, the silver lining, I should say, is that we did create this online experience for folks, and that is expanding our audiences around the country and the world. So it really is important that we keep that going, and hopefully it's something that stays.
Right. So I just want to make sure everyone understands that option for folks to be able to do either or and still enjoy the symphony, and that even again gives you a potentially broader audience of anyone who's connected to the internet can enjoy the sounds and sights of the San Juan Symphony when they are in concert. And so, talk to me about the Petite Suite for orchestra, if you would, the second piece on the
and actually
program.
I will, and I think I'm actually going to leave Roussel's music in the Petite Suite as my third description, because I think part of what was so exciting about this program, again, using the Samuel Barber and this American music as the centerpiece, we also have on this program the music of Florence Price, another American composer who is relatively unappreciated for her contributions to American music, but now is finally coming to be understood as one of the founders of what we consider an American classical voice. Florence Price was born in the late 19th century in Arkansas. Her father is black, her mother is white, and they had some challenges, of course, in the early 20th century America, especially in sort of the Jim Crow South. She and her husband, when she came back from her studies, had to get out of the South and flee sort of racist anti-African American sentiments there, and they moved to Chicago, where she was able to flourish as an artist in that environment of intellectuals and Black American artists in the 1930s in particular. And so Florence Price, again, it's almost as though her voice was silenced, and we are now able to bring her back and appreciate her contributions. So this a suite of dances of Florence Price that we have on the program is a very different kind of American voice, but one that is more foundational. You know, she is tapping into all of the sort of folk idioms and American traditions that were thriving at that time. Ragtime, a lot of popular dances like the Charleston and the Foxtrot. All of these sort of popular styles made their way into her suite of dances. So these are three short dances that make an impression of an American, a real Americana, really the sense of the 1920s, the Roaring Twenties, and these dance forms. The instrumental writing here has been orchestrated from the original piano music, but it's very fun, very upbeat and lively, and it really does have that kind of folksy American quality versus Samuel Barber's more operatic, romantic American side. And I think we might have some of Florence Price's music to share today, Scott, is that right?
We do. I was able to find a little bit. It hasn't been performed too frequently, so there aren't a lot of recordings of it, but I'll leave it to YouTube to have a selection from the Sequoia Symphony. So let's take a little break in the interview, Thomas, and we'll play some selections of this piece for our audiences this morning. Here we go, everybody. Music from the Sequoia Symphony from California there, presenting one piece that we'll be hearing this weekend at the San Juan Symphony concert in both Farmington on Saturday and Durango on Sunday afternoon. Thomas Heuser, the music director of the San Juan Symphony, is my guest this morning, and that's pretty lively music, Thomas Heuser.
A nice job, and those of you that are viewing this can see some of the images that the Sequoia Symphony was putting together there. This is a pandemic era recording, much like what we did last year. You have the empty concert hall, musicians and masks. I'm just glad that we've transitioned back to the point where we do have some of those seats filled, but nevertheless, this music really does have all kinds of American influences. You hear this sort of syncopated ragtime rhythms, the sounds of the jazzy trumpets and clarinets. It is very American, and so Florence Price, again, we are so grateful to feature her music on this program. She has many, many works for orchestra that we want to perform, and this is just sort of an introduction to her music for our San Juan Symphony audiences.
Right, very true, very true. That's wonderful. And again, hasn't been performed all that frequently, so great to be able to have her music performed and heard by audiences here in the Four Corners.
Absolutely, and that's really one of the themes of this concert, as you started out by saying, is we haven't heard this music very much. That's really the case for everything on this program, and it brings us to the Petite suite of Albert Roussel. When I was looking at this program again, it was kind of the fascination for me was the 20th century in general. You know, there's a sort of industrialization and these new sounds of the city and urban life making its way into classical compositions. I'm thinking of other French composers of the 20th century, like Igor Stravinsky, who's not French, but who was thriving in Paris in the 20th century and making these, new sounds and modernism making its way into the symphonic orchestra. And so with these two American pieces, I thought it was interesting to have the contrast of a French composer, but again, a French composer writing with the exact same size of orchestra, and a French composer who took a lot of influences from other kind of musical cultures. So we have the music of Albert Roussel, and it's, again, very rarely performed. I would say that probably this Petite suite has never been performed in the Southwest, let alone by the San Juan Symphony. And so I'm excited to feature this composer as someone new. Now, of course, this music comes from 1929. The Petite suite for orchestra is in 3 movements. And I think right away you get a sense of the sort of industrialization, the urban sounds of like busy street life and that kind of thing going on in the first movement. It's called Aubade, which is sort of the opposite of a nocturne. If a nocturne is a night song, an Aubade is a song in the morning. So you sort of sounds like the traffic is getting going and things are getting busy. It is really linked into this perpetual motion sound that we have in the finale of the Barber Violin Concerto, all the motion that's going on and kind of the commotion, actually, very 20th century Paris. And so we have mixed into that, of course, some sort of lilting waltzes. This music is fashioned in an unusual time signature or meter. It's 2 groups of 3 and then 2 groups of 2, which is so this mixture of rhythms is, again, a very 20th century phenomenon. That's Leonard Bernstein's I Want to Be in America. Very similar kind of mixture of rhythms, very 20th century. And again, so we have this sort of fast-paced morning music, some sort of silly kind of circus sounds mixed in. It's very unusual and very fun. But again, Roussel's music is still rooted in a tonal center. A lot of the music from this time in the late 1920s, 1930s in Europe went to the much more avant-garde. This is still, it has influences of that, but it doesn't go all the way to the point of atonality or serialism or anything like that. It is still harmonic, still very enjoyable to listen to, not too discordant in my ear, but it's still different. It really is a different voice, something that we're not very accustomed to. So I love the energy of this first movement. Great solos for the woodwinds, trumpeter, and again, as you mentioned, the percussion is finally back on stage with us to give it that rhythmic drive.
Very good.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So the second and third movements, also wonderful. The second movement is a pastoral, beautiful opening solo for the oboist. And the last movement is called Masquerade. So it really has a kind of a party atmosphere. All of these works, I would say also, are very concise. And so this program is not very long. It'll last about 1 hour. Again, we don't have an intermission right now at the San Juan Symphony, only a sort of stretch break for the audiences to get out of their seats and move their feet a little bit. But again, the concise nature of this music to me is interesting because it's in the Romantic era at the end of the 19th century, symphonies were getting very, very massive. I'm thinking of symphonies of Mahler, Rachmaninoff, a number of other Romantic composers. Things just were on a grand scale. And so these more microscopic works, they really, they show the composers writing in a more refined style. I think that was one of the aesthetic moves in this part of the 20th century, was to give more condensed musical offerings that packed a bigger punch right away. So we have that in all three of these selections from Florence Price, Albert Roussel, and Samuel Barber with this weekend with the San Juan Symphony. I am so excited to be back with the orchestra for this fantastic music and look forward to sharing it with our audiences in Farmington and Durango.
No kidding, very true. Well, and I think the musicians are glad to be back, aren't they? I mean, did you get that from the rehearsals, that they're so excited to be able to gather together and then perform in front of people in those seats? They're not having to perform in an empty venue like they did for all of last year?
Absolutely. I mean, we did have some musicians performing last year, primarily our strings, but yes, this year has just been enthusiastic from the start by the musicians in particular. And then when those halls are filled with people, we just feed off of that. That really is our motivation at the end of the day, is to share this art with the public. And so having that connection with our listeners has made all the difference. Scott, it's fantastic.
Wonderful. Well, it's always great to see, of course, to fill the halls and to share the music with audiences in person. And of course, we know there's a bunch joining online too, which is always another great option. So we want to make sure folks remember that. Before we run out of time this morning, Thomas, I did want to ask you about the other concert coming up in April, and then, as I said, what else you have up your sleeve a little bit after that. If you could tease us a little bit about your plans.
Sure, thank you. So yes, the season finale this year in April will feature Tchaikovsky's Fourth Symphony, and again, our largest group of the year as we emerge from these pandemic restrictions. So excited for Tchaikovsky's Fourth. We're also playing Sibelius's tone poem Finlandia, another audience favorite. I know everyone's really looking forward to those. And then we have a brand new piece called Fanfare for Democracy, which is a co-commission between the San Juan Symphony and orchestras in all 50 states by the composer James Stevenson. We've played some of Jim's music before, and he's a fixture, I would say, of the San Juan Symphony in terms of our collaborations with living composers. This Fanfare for Democracy was first played at the Biden-Harris inauguration in January of 2021, and we are, of course, delighted to be the representative orchestra here in the Four Corners on this 50-state collaboration. So that's a very exciting feature of our April finale, and audiences can get tickets for all of this at sanjuansymphony.org. I'm still in Idaho, so I'm trying to switch brain spaces here. So sanjuansymphony.org is where you get tickets to both the Farmington and Durango performances. And then coming up in May, we're extending our season a little bit into the month of May. We have our family concert, which was rescheduled from October. We're still planning to play the Carnival of the Animals. So that's coming up in May. Again, all the information's on our website. It's a family-friendly program. It's audiences of all ages invited to attend, and we are so thrilled to have Holly Quist and Lisa Campy-Walters as our two piano soloists for the Carnival of the Animals. This is wonderful music of Camille Saint-Saëns, a great introduction to the instruments of the orchestra, and just a lot of fun for all involved. And also in May, coming up on Mother's Day, we have the beginnings of what we hope will be a new chamber music series at the San Juan Symphony. We have a program of string music, chamber music with the San Juan Symphony String Quartet, including side-by-side performances of student string players from the community. They'll be all joining together, all 8 musicians, for Mendelssohn's Octet for Strings. And again, that's 3 p.m. in Durango on Mother's Day. So we hope it's an opportunity you could complement your Mother's Day brunch with a little bit of music. And again, excited to make this a series that kicks off. We're hoping to have performances in both Durango and Farmington, concerts that explore alternate venues and get our instrumentalists into more intimate settings with our audiences for some chamber music. So that's coming up in May of 22. So the music continues, Scott.
Sounds terrific, Thomas, and that's it's wonderful. So a lot of opportunities to catch the San Juan Symphony. And again, sanjuansymphony.org is the website to get your tickets and find out all the dates and all the other pertinent information about the concerts. If you want to join us in person or go online, you can get all the details on the website. But a busy week for you, Thomas Heuser. So again, we always appreciate you spending a little bit of your week with me on these preview programs. So thank you so very much.
I'm so grateful, Scott, for the opportunity. Thanks so much, and looking forward to seeing audiences this weekend. Thank you.
You bet. You bet. That's Thomas Heuser, the music director of the San Juan Symphony, my guest this morning right here on KSJE. KSJE and San Juan College present the Student Success Coaching Tip of the Week.
Welcome! We're back at Week 5, Coaching Tips of the Week. My name is Emin Chi with the Student Achievement Center. This week is asking for help. If you really don't understand a concept, ask questions. Stop by your professor's office during their office hours, or contact classmates and your professors via email or Canvas. You can go to the tutoring center. Some classes might even have a Facebook group to keep students engaged and to create an environment to ask questions outside of class. Either way, your professors will be on your side, non-judgmental, wanting to help you understand the class in its entirety.
The Student Success Coaching Tip of the Week, presented by KSJE and the Student Achievement Center at San Juan College. KSJE is supported by the Farmington Civic Center, bringing a full slate of entertainment to Farmington and San Juan County. Dancing with the Farmington Stars, Saturday, February 19th at 7 p.m. The Farmington Civic Center, 200 West Arrington in downtown Farmington. Find out more online at fmtn.org/shows or 505-599-1148.
Hello everyone, my name is Mick Hess, your host